Sunset Overdrive is a game that I can easily describe in one word: freedom. Many games have tried to express freedom through different types of gameplay mechanics, such as character customization and different dialogue choices and decisions that the player can make. Sunset Overdrive takes player expression and freedom to a whole nother level, with its freedom found all over the place, not only in its gameplay, but also in its character customization and even the freedom of the story. This was a game that felt very chaotic in nature. A game that bounced around from being serious to breaking the fourth wall constantly. A game at times where you felt like the developers didn't even care what they were doing, but not in a negative way, more in a rebellious way, or more in a way where all sense of authority and regulation was taken away from you, where all sense of reality was taken away from you. The level of freedom that someone can only imagine in their mind, that they can only dream about. To go from doing normal mundane things to the next thing you're flying in the sky. Going from a dead-end job to becoming a hero to many. These are things you can only dream about, things that can only be achieved through fiction. Sunset Overdrive taps right into that feeling that you used to have when you were younger, or maybe you even have today. That feeling of wanting to be free, that feeling of wanting to just do what you want, and the want to just truly be yourself and to be better than what you once was before. Sunset Overdrive starts with the player working at a Fizco event for the new drink they created called Overdrive. While goofing off on the job, they realize they're being attacked by some type of creepy overdrive infused humans, later to be dubbed the OD. Saved by a mysterious man, the player fights their way back to their apartment and spends the night in captivity. After some time, the player finally comes out and meets the man that saves them, who is Walter, and he sets you out on your journey. Walter has plans to escape Sunset City. He used to work security for Fizco and informs the player, along with his friend Floyd, who used to be an engineer for Fizco, informs the player that this was not planned, as it's suspected that Fizco might have purposely turned one into OD, but in fact it was completely by accident, as they did not test out the product before serving it to the public. As you begin to work with Floyd and Walter, an unfortunate event happens where Walter's helicopter/plane car gets destroyed, and in order to make it up to Walter, the player tries to find a way to repair the vehicle. You end up bumping into a new character named Sam, who is a nerdy tech type who used to go to Oxford College. By helping him out and his so-called friends, they are able to make a 3D printer that allows them to make the propeller that you need. You also help Sam with his confidence, as like I said, he's the nerdy type and he isn't that well versed in conversation, and he doesn't even realize that his friends really aren't his friends, but just a bunch of punks that are using him because they're no good, spoiled brats from rich families. After getting everything you need, Walter finds out that you've been secretly trying to help him, and he seems very appreciative. As you guys try to escape the city, Fizco sends in a blimp that is seemingly trying to collect data from everyone. As you destroy the blimp and make your way out of the city, Walter realizes that there is no escape, as there is literally an invisible wall blocking you from leaving the game. Walter then ends up sacrificing himself to save the player, and you all continue on with the help of Floyd to find a way out of the city and to fulfill Walter's wish of exposing what happened in Sunset City. The game then brings you on a journey of different factions that you will meet throughout the game. Troop Bushido, a group of young adults a part of some type of Boy Scout-like group, who is missing their troop master, Bill Cream. Norton, another member of the troop, seems to be the active leader, as Bill Cream is missing. One of the troop members, For Kim, ends up leaving due to her agreeing with you that Norton is a butthole, and she suspects that Bill Cream is actually somewhere hidden in the city and Norton isn't even trying to find him. Later it's discovered that Norton actually set him up and stuck him inside of a garbage disposal truck. And unfortunately, he had to lose some of his limbs in the process, I guess in order to survive. The game doesn't really explain why his limbs are gone, so I imagine he just ate them. After confronting Norton about his betrayal to Bill Cream, Norton ends up drinking a can of Overdrive and turns into a dragon. With Norton dead, the player then becomes an honorary troop member, and Bill Cream reveals a way to get out of the city. He's noticed that the invisible wall does not stop boats of trash, so he ends up making a design to build a boat, but he cannot make it himself, and he points you in the direction of his friend Ignatius. Now, alongside Ignatius being a part of the boat union, he is also a big LARPer. A LARPer is someone who does live action role playing. and in his group, which is known as Fargania, he is the king. However, the king is quite sick, and in order to get his help, obviously the player must find a way to make him feel better. Even as going as far as drinking so much medicine that the player gets intoxicated and has to use leeches in order to get the medicine sucked out of their body in order to put on Ignatius' body. After going through hell and back, Ignatius is finally feeling well. However, Ignatius himself has his own issue. Before he can build a boat for you, he must take down King Scab, who has stolen his crown. As the player and Ignatius' crew heads to King Scab's lair, the player says to Ignatius that maybe you should stop LARPing just for a moment and actually use some guns, because you're going to pretty much die if you go in there with foam swords and nothing but crossbows. Ignatius and his crew denied this and fought very strong and bravely, and actually made it all the way to the king's doorstep, only to be shot as soon as they get there. I found this to be funny because King Ignatius decides to break his role playing in order to actually do some real fighting. The player ends up helping Ignatius take down King Scab and returning his crown. And now Ignatius is able to build the boat that the player needs. The player ends up heading out of Sunset City with the help of Wendy, one of Ignatius's friends and LARPers. As you finally make it out of the city, fighting off many OD in the process, the player gets a call from all their friends informing them that Fizzco is actually coming to destroy the city. Realizing what's truly important to the player heads back into Sunset City to fight off all of Fizzco and to save their friends. After saving everyone, it's revealed that Fizzco is planning on completely destroying the city, and they only have so many days before they can stop it. But they need a way into Fizzco HQ in order to find out a way to actually stop this attack. And the only people they think that can get them in there is actually a mysterious group that the game hints to multiple times throughout the story. That's Las Catrinas, a group of ninja cheerleaders that are hiding out in a local hospital that are helping out the children that are still stuck there. Esperanza, the leader, doesn't seem to like the player very much, as they feel the player is too reckless and dangerous. The player tries to convince Esperanza by doing a bunch of errands for her, but she rejects this offer as she doesn't need anything from the player. After even trying to impress her by giving her a badass sword, she still rejects you. You are then informed that maybe you should go for something that they really care about, which ends up being the children. After speaking to one of the kids, you find out that they never experienced a rock concert, and in the apocalypse, it may seem like they never will. So the player actually assembles a band, including their friends and King Buzzo, the lead singer of the Melvins, to put on a benefit concert for the kids. This concert, of course, is attacked by the OD, but you make quick work of them, and Esperanza, impressed by the player, decides to help you break into Fizzco HQ. Now here comes the final battle as you and all your friends march on to Fizzco HQ to destroy this weapon that's supposed to destroy the entire city. After Sam breaks into Fizzco HQ in order to hack it, he realizes that he can't and comes up with a plan in order to destroy the building itself. There's actually a display bottle of Overdrive sitting on the building next to the main Fizzco HQ. He comes up with a plan that you should destroy this bottle, and destroying the bottle will end up shooting it into the sky, destroying the building. As the player rides the bottle, they end up hitting the building and destroying the field around the building, but ends up dying in the process. However, you gotta remember that this is Sunset Overdrive. One thing I haven't really talked about is how much this game breaks the fourth wall. Constantly throughout the story, the player will look at the camera and break the fourth wall, or outright just admit that this is in fact a video game. Even is going as far as telling other characters in the game that if they die, it's over, but if the player dies, they'll just respawn. And of course, in a very hilarious and goofy fashion, after the player seemingly sacrifices themselves to save everyone, the game rolls credits only for the player to come back and say that this death is not good enough for them.
Minute. That's the ending? Are you serious? Whose idea was that? Yours? Or yours? Bad move, guys. NeoGaf is gonna eat you alive. You know what? I deserve a better ending. I got an idea. Okay, rewind!
I just lost the best friend I've ever had.
Hey, everybody! Who wants to get drunk on milk and crackers?
But here it's revealed that the real weapon was the physical building itself. As the building becomes alive, the player must hunt down the building and destroy it. After destroying the building, Sunset City seems to be saved, and everyone seems to be enjoying their time while they can in the apocalypse. Or as Floyd says, the fun-pocalypse. After the game's credits roll, it is revealed that Fizco is now shipping out Overdrive, seemingly to other cities and locations, leading to a potential sequel. Now I know this story seems very goofy and over the top, but let me tell you what the important message was throughout the entire story. Throughout this whole story, the game expressed that people should be expressive and should be themselves. The player themselves even says that their life didn't begin until the apocalypse happened, as they were just working a dead-end job and not really being who they really want to be. But in the apocalypse, or in the fun-pocalypse, they're able to be whoever they want, and so was everyone else. Floyd, who was an engineer for Fizco, even spoke about this as well. He is constantly reminding the player that they should be who they really want to be, who they really are. And Walter, although his time in the game was short, his presence was felt throughout the entire game. He is constantly brought up by Floyd and even the player as they try to live up to his wish to bring down Fizco and just the way that the man lived his life. Walter may have been a very grumpy old man, but according to Floyd, he wasn't judgmental. Floyd even said that despite how he looked and his behavior, Walter seemed to only focus on who people really are inside, their true character. And that's what this game focuses on the most. You could say that the game has a few stereotypes. Sam being the awkward nerd, but even though he is that, the player didn't really seem to be bothered too much about this. The player focused more on who Sam was. Sam really cared about his friends, even to a fault at times, and that was the good part about Sam. Making fun of him for being a nerd or being lame really wasn't the point. That wasn't the reason they put him in the game or expressed him in this way. It was to show, despite how he appeared on the outside and the assumptions that you may have on someone that may be nerd-like, you may be missing out on a good person in the end by judging them before you get to know them. That goes for pretty much every faction in the game as well. You could say that the Bushido troop are kind of strange, as they are pretty much grown adults that are still moving around like they're Boy Scouts. But in the end, they were very loyal and actually good people who care so much about their campmaster that they risked their lives to find him even in a dangerous world such as Sunset City. The LARPers remained who they were even though the world was crumbling around them. And they still care for their king even though in reality they really could have just ditched him. And of course, Las Catrinas could have been selfish and not worry about the children that were stuck in Sunset City during the apocalypse. And instead of judging them based upon the way they decide to express themselves, using the Day of the Dead makeup and the cheerleader outfits that could come across very strange to any other person, you got to know them and understand that they were actually decent people. The whole game is about expressing yourself and being who you truly are, not going around and judging people based upon their appearance. The entire game has this feeling of it's one big party. Despite the world crumbling around you, just enjoy the time you have and with the people that you really care about. And maybe even meet new friends along the way, people that you would have never spoken to if not in this situation. Because remember, in the apocalypse, many things don't matter anymore. It's about survival, and it's also about keeping a level head about yourself. It's a complete flip on the typical apocalyptic video game stories that you see all the time, where everybody's worried about food and everybody's worried about surviving. And Sunset Overdrive is about discovering who you truly are. What would you do if the government and all authority just seem to disappear and you're left to your own devices? Of course, you'll have people doing crazy things and you have people dominating over others, but there's another side of that too. The group of people who just seem to want to enjoy their life as they can, as long as they have it. And that's what Sunset Overdrive really focused on, and that's the part of the story that I really enjoyed. A more positive outlook of seeing the world end around you. That feeling of freedom that you don't get when you're focused on bills and you're focused on your day-to-day life. The developers felt so free that even in its writing, the game had no problem breaking the fourth wall or even throwing in jokes that other people find off-putting because they feel they need to feel immersed as possible while playing a game. It could come off rebellious, and I even felt that at sometimes too, but honestly, now that I've done some deeper reflection, I don't think it's just as much as it's being rebellious and going against the status quo. It's just being free. It's like Insomniac Games had no restrictions on this game at all and said, let's just do whatever we want to do. And that also was reflected in its gameplay. A brief explanation of what this game is: it's a third-person shooter action-adventure game with a heavy emphasis on traversal. Now, this game is often compared to a third-person shooting Tony Hawk game, and that's due to all the grinding that you can do in the game and bouncing off all over the buildings and walls. Let's go over the traversal mechanics first. The player can grind and even undergrind certain poles and rails. The player can also bounce off any surface that appears to be bounceable, and also wall ride any building that they see. Now, in order to talk about how the traversal system works in this game, I have to talk about how the game is also designed when it comes to a city. You see, Sunset Overdrive is actually quite unique in its design. Everything is extremely bright and colorful, and as someone who enjoys to turn up my saturation on my TV, this game truly pops. One thing Sunset Overdrive doesn't do is it doesn't have the obvious signs that something is interactable. So what I mean by that is, when you see something that you're able to bounce on, unlike in many other games that will have a clear distinction between what's bounceable and what's not, Sunset Overdrive doesn't. It's quite rare that you will ever try to bounce on something and it's not bounceable. I'm bringing this up because this way the game keeps its theme of being bright, colorful, and free and not restrictive. See, in many other games, when you're able to climb on something, interact, they normally put some type of weird coloring on it that's consistent throughout the game, letting you know that this is a climbable object or this is an object that the player can interact with. This game kind of reminds me again of Tony Hawk, as in those games you're able to grind and do many tricks off many different objects, but none of them have a distinctive, hey, this is me, the grindable thing. It doesn't have that kind of aesthetic to it. And Sunset Overdrive keeps that in mind as well. That's important because the entire traversal system blends into the regular combat, which is mostly shooting. There is melee combat, but it's very simple and is only used in crutch situations. As you bounce, grind, and wall ride across the city, you'll also be shooting many OD. In typical Insomniac fashion, there are many guns for you to experiment with, and Insomniac really let loose with the creativity of these guns. Sure, you have a few weapons that are actually very typical weapons that you'll find in real life, such as a revolver and an AK-47. Funny enough, every other gun is so unique that these guns seem unique as well because they're so mundane. You got guns that shoot bowling balls, you got guns that freeze people, you got shotguns that set people on fire, you even have a gun that shoots a bunch of vinyl discs. This blends in with the traversal system because this game, again like Tony Hawk, has a combo meter. As you do different grinds, bounces, and tricks alongside shooting OD and killing them, you end up building up your combo meter. As long as you don't stop moving and break momentum, you're able to keep your combo going as long as you can. The only thing that breaks your combo is seemingly stopping dead in your tracks. So let's say if you were bouncing on something and continue to bounce on it, the combo will still stay in place. Or if you were grinding and continue to grind where you were, the combo will stay in place. But if you land on the ground and begin to walk, the combo will break unless you're still shooting and killing enemies. A hit from an enemy does not necessarily mean that your combo will be broken, but it can be if you lose momentum after taking damage. As you continue your combo, you will build up your style meter, which goes from level 1 to level 3. Building up your style meter activates different special abilities that you can attach to your player. These abilities are called amps. Amps are basically buffs that the player can activate as they build up their style meter depending upon which gauge they currently are at. You have melee amps that modify your melee swing, allowing you to do things like shoot fireballs from your melee weapon or even shoot a tornado out. You have your hero amp, which is the weakest of the amps, as these have very passive buffs that the player can have. One of the most powerful ones I think out of this group that I use is the ability to do extra damage while in the air. And you can have two of these hero amps at once. And level 3 is your epic amp. These are the most powerful ones in the game, and you can have abilities such as a lightning cloud that strikes random enemies at will. Your weapons as well can have amps. These are modifiers that you can put on your weapons, such as the ability to electrocute all the enemies around you, or even allow your gun to gain extra XP as you kill different enemies. The one and only criticism I can think of when it comes to this weapon system is the damage scaling. You see, each gun does a specific amount of damage to different types of enemies. There are 4 main different enemies. There are the humanoid enemies, the regular OD, the super OD, which are the big ones, and you have the physical robots. And each gun does different amount of damage depending upon who you're shooting at. Now, in fairness, most of the game you will be shooting at just the regular OD, but it kind of depends on where you are in the story and what part of the city you are at. Having different damage depending upon which enemy you're shooting at isn't a big deal. I actually think that's actually a good thing, as it will encourage the player to switch different weapons out and to customize their loadout differently. The issue I have is how switching weapons works in this game. See, you can switch weapons on the fly as you're shooting different enemies bouncing around across the city. And you can even hold down the weapon wheel button and get a slow motion effect to properly choose which gun you want on the fly. The issue I have is that the only way you can check which weapon does what damage to which enemy is in the main menu and not in the weapon wheel itself, which is weird because they could have made enough space in order to display this information to you. So sometimes you'll pick a weapon thinking it'll do enough damage to a certain enemy, and it's really not doing next to nothing. So it's best for you to remember your loadout and remember which gun does which, but I'll admit, there's so many guns you can pick from in your weapon wheel, it kind of gets a little tricky remembering which gun does which. The game also has badges. Now, badges kind of work like an RPG system in a sense. Basically, the player is rewarded based upon the things you decide to do. So for example, you unlock badges in the assault rifle category if you use a lot of assault rifles and get a lot of kills with one. If you seem to grind a lot, you will unlock grind badges. So essentially, as long as you're doing a particular action, you unlock badges in that category. Badges can be spent on different buffs that can apply to the player, and you can have up to 6 different badges. Some badges even requiring points from multiple different types of ways you could play the game. These buffs can greatly increase damage and make it so that you can actually take less damage from different types of enemies. Of course, with Insomniac Games developing a great traversal system, there will be collectibles. And I can tell you right now, compared to other games, collecting things in this game is actually quite enjoyable because the movement is enjoyable. You'll be collecting old sneakers, toilet paper, fizz cold balloons, and destroying cameras, among many other things that you can collect and pick up. These collectibles can be used to upgrade different amps that the player can buy and collect throughout the game. As you kill enemies, you also get fizz cold cans. You can use these to buy ammo, new guns, and even maps that show you where other collectibles are in the world. You also will collect money. Now, money directly goes to your customization, buying clothes for your player character that you can use to mismatch and create any type of character you want. I haven't really spoke about character customization, so let's go over that right now. The customization is vast, but I'll be honest, compared to most games today, it might be considered bare bones. You don't have that many body types to choose from, only having 4 represented. 2 for male and 2 for female. One represent a slimmer male or slimmer female and a bigger male or a bigger female. But when it comes to things like hairstyle, changing the color of the hair, the different eyes you can have, the game is very vast when it comes to that. Faces, not so much, but there's enough to choose from and different skin tones that come with each face. The clothes is where the game shines, as the game has many different clothes that you can use, and they also have many different unique color palettes as well. Unfortunately, you cannot make clothes any color you want, but I have to say there's enough different variation that I never felt like I couldn't put together an outfit that would represent the type of character I wanted to show. Again, this game leans into freedom and being who you want to be. I believe that's why many of the clothes options are kind of wacky and silly, pushing the player to get out of their comfort zone. I'm sure a lot of people will see this crazy, bright, colorful game and try to make the most serious looking character possible, but that's not really where they wanted to go with it. Sure, you could put on regular clothes and your character will look kind of like how people would normally look in their day-to-day life, But this game is trying to encourage you to get out of your box and be more experimentative and more expressive in your clothing options. We went over the main story and its many missions, but this game has plenty of side missions and challenges for the player to tackle. Side missions typically having you do silly things from the different factions that you meet throughout the game, all of which will reward you with different money and currency, but some will even reward you with special weapons and even special amps and clothing that you cannot ordinarily get. And of course the game's silly dialogue comes along with this, so I find most of the side quests to be enjoyable. The main side quest that I found to be enjoyable the most is actually this kind of detective-like side quest where a mysterious guy on the phone wants you to find different evidence to expose that Fizz Code was up to no good and actually destroy Sunset City with their Overdrive drink. When it comes to challenges, these range from traversal challenges to combat challenges to weapon specific challenges, and the list goes on. This is when the game gets kind of an Arcadey feel, and I very much enjoyed this aspect of the game. There are challenges that has the player racing through hoops trying to get to the finish line as quickly and as stylish as possible. And the cool thing about this is that on Xbox and I'm sure even PC, you're actually competing against your friends. So even though each challenge has a gold medal that you can hit that will give you all of the rewards from the challenge, you may see that one of your fellow friends online actually got a higher score than you. I found myself going around doing challenges over again anytime a friend of mine beat my score. Again, if it wasn't for the fun gameplay, I probably wouldn't feel the need to do this or even the want to do it. I have done many of the same challenges multiple times just to beat one of my friends' high score. And Dr. Feelgood, if you come around here again, beat my high score again, I'm gonna get upset. This applies to all the challenges as well. The combat challenges are really fun in my opinion, as not only do you have to kill the enemies in a specific way, there's also a timer. Challenge you to kill the enemies in a specific way, as killing them in any other way will not move you along in the mission. There are also these traversal missions that have you collecting different numbers. Each number will also increase your score depending upon how high the number is. For the maximum goal, of course you want to collect all the numbers before the goal ends, but this could be pretty tricky as the timer is a really close fit. Sometimes I've collected all the numbers with only 1 second left on the clock. And weapon specific challenges are also pretty fun as they get creative depending upon which weapon you use, and you get to learn how each individual weapon can be used in combat to its fullest. All challenges can be replayed at any time, but when it comes to side missions and main missions, once they're done, they're done. The challenges being replayable keeps the feeling of the awesome apocalypse alive even after the story is done, as you're able to goof around in the world and has just as much fun as you did completing the main story. These challenges are also short enough that you don't feel bad for repeating them multiple times over and over again. Now, something I cannot leave out when it comes to this game's presentation and gameplay is its music. The music that's going to constantly play throughout this game is rock and roll, and the unique part of it is how the music works. When the game begins, the music doesn't actually begin to play. It often is silent until things begin to happen. As you see the OD flood the streets, and that's one thing I want to bring up too with the presentation. The OD really flood the streets. You will see hundreds of OD coming at the player all at once. And when that music kicks in, that's when you know trouble will arise. The music gets more chaotic and intense as you build up style meter and as more and more OD begin to come at the player to attack. But when things are calm and chill, the music seems to die out. This dynamic music actually adds to the whole entire feel of the game. It makes what you do feel more important as you build up style and get more creative. The music kicks in. Kind of like when you watch a movie and the main character is about to do something impressive, the music starts to play. But when things are calm and quiet, there is no music, it is just the sound of the world around them. Sunset Overdrive to me is one of the greatest games I've ever played. As someone who's been enjoying Insomniac's work since Spyro the Dragon on PlayStation 1, I can safely say that this game combines almost everything that Insomniac ever did into one project. It takes the crazy guns from Ratchet & Clank alongside the earlier Ratchet & Clank's way of telling stories. That kind of dry humor, sarcastic type way of getting a point across is actually pretty serious for people to understand and know about. It also took some of the minor RPG elements that Ratchet & Clank also had as well and threw it in this game. It took the creative side missions, and arcade style gameplay that games like Spyro the Dragon had, especially in its flying missions where you had to fly across different stages in Spyro the Dragon and destroy different types of scenery and collect different types of objects. They took in everything they learned and just said, let's have fun with it. This game is an exaggerated, over-the-top expression of freedom. A game that I don't think we'll ever get again. I did a video explaining why I don't believe we'll get a Sunset Overdrive 2, although I truly hope that I am wrong about this. Unfortunately, Insomniac Games is now purchased by PlayStation, and PlayStation is anything but about being free. At least not in the way that Sunset Overdrive wishes to express freedom. The humor is too over the top for PlayStation nowadays. Sony clearly likes depressing apocalyptic stories and not anything fun. And unfortunately, politically today, the type of jokes, like I said, and even ways you can express the characters and the things that they say, just simply won't be allowed, especially on a PlayStation platform. Sunset Overdrive may be the only game of its kind. A game that infused two of the greatest games ever made, in my opinion, Grand Theft Auto 3 and Tony Hawk Pro Skater. The relation to Tony Hawk has already been given, but the relation using Grand Theft Auto 3 is a bit different. Of course, this game is a shooting game like Grand Theft Auto 3, but it's not a crime game. The connection I see between this game and Grand Theft Auto 3 is their rebellious nature. A development team daring enough to do something that no one else was willing to do and no one else wanted to take a risk on. So much so that PlayStation even rejected this game, making Microsoft be the ones to come and pick the game up themselves. From its mechanics, presentation, and its storytelling, I deem Sunset Overdrive a solid 10 out of 10. This is a game that you must play, a game that you cannot pass on, and hopefully one day this franchise will be revived and the sun will rise again on Sunset City. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future videos. Thank you.
Doesn't matter what you do, I'm still gonna kill all you foes!
Now that is how you end a game.